So that's the USP of this car. I don't think will be represented in the game. Therefore, I don't care about it.
I mean, who knows?
Well, it's billionaires doing billionaire things, and it's not for me to understand, really. Hello and welcome to the Traxion Control podcast, your weekly dose of racing game and sim racing news and opinions. I'm Tom, joined by John. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you, Tom. How are you?
Fine, but not joined by other Tom, because congratulations to Tom and Ellie. They got married and he's got a Monday off over the weekend. But we were there. It was a great time, wasn't it?
It was fantastic. Yeah, it was a beautiful setting. Everyone was in great spirits. I didn't quite manage to join Tom and Ellie out for the second part of their evening, which I believe went on for quite a while. So I'm not particularly surprised that he's off today. But yeah, absolutely delighted for those two. It was a great day. And yeah, hopefully, Tom, you are enjoying a nice chilled Monday before opening your email inbox again and getting overwhelmed.
Yeah, let's not mention that. But I would like to say that my full name is Thomas Harrison Lord. It's a double-barreled surname. John is recently married. Another Traxion podcast marriage. I'm letting the side down.
2 in 2 weeks.
So you're John Danvers-Munro now. So I'm THL, you're JDM. And Tom has always been Tom Stapley Bunton, so TSB. However, when he's got married, him and Ellie, they've removed the Stapley, so he's just Tom Bunton. So he's broken the trifecta of Traxion double-barreledness.
We could have renamed the podcast the Double Barrel Podcast, and it would have sounded like every other podcast in the world. But unfortunately, we're going to have to stick to Traxion Control. Yeah, just let the side down. Times.
So speaking of Traxion Control, let's dive into the first news story, which is that Trak Racer, the Australian, with sort of a Dutch outpost, sim racing equipment manufacturer and flight sim and truck sim. So mainly cockpits and seats, but they do other things like the mounts, and they have done some monitors and headphones in the past, and they had some prototypes for wheels at one point. It is now being subsumed and taken over by Corsair, and then folded under Fanatec as a sub-brand.
Caught us completely off guard, or at least it caught me off guard. Not something I was expecting. I think we talked a lot about Trak Racer earlier this year, specifically revolving around the Charlotte Sim Racing Expo, which we were at, and Trak Racer brought the most products I've ever seen any one company bring to an expo. And they weren't all in launch state. There were a number of them in prototypes form. Some of them were actually in a launchable form as well. But I believe there was like 15 to 20 new products, or maybe even more than that. And you can go and watch our full expo video if you want to see a roundup of all of those products. I don't even know if we covered them all. There were so many. So we kind of thought, okay, Trak Racer is making big moves, bringing lots of new products over the next few years. I'm sure some of them won't happen. I'm sure many of them will. So I wasn't in any way anticipating some sort of takeover later in the year, but here we are. And the interesting thing for me, Tom, was it appears to be that the Trak Racer assets have been bought and taken over and joining the Corsair family, but not the actual Trak Racer business. So I'm not sure what
so just
that terminology means, but we need to be careful.
I think we're okay. That's some legalese, some weird technicality thing. I did see some other reports getting really confused and thinking it was a merger or just they bought the assets, but they have bought the. There was a Corsair earnings call after the announcement. They've bought everything, but you're right. Legally, potentially not Trak Racer, let's say LTD or limited company, or GmbH if it was in Germany. I don't think that's necessarily been purchased, but we've seen this before in sim racing with Motorsport Games when it bought Kartcraft. It bought Kartcraft, the IP, the licensing, the source code, the whole thing. It didn't technically buy the development studio. It bought everything that they have, and then hired some of the people, or all the people in that instance, right? And I think it might also be to do with buying a company in Australia, which can be a bit tricky. But for all intents and purposes, for this here, we can simply say they have bought Trak Racer, because everything it's ever created and owned is now Corsair's, just maybe not the bit of paper for the original holding company. But it does mean that we're not entirely sure what happens to the team, and we have approached Corsair for further information and not received anything back. Certainly, Matt Sten, the founder, he's still going to be employed within this new, and this is an interesting bit, Sim Solutions division. So within Corsair, there's now a Sim Solutions division, and that'll be Fanatec and Trak Racer. Could be someone else in the future. And of course, we've got a quote here from Thaila, who's the CEO of Corsair. We folded sim racing into one entity, if you want to call it that way, and the Trak Racer products will fold underneath the Fanatec brand umbrella. So interesting. I think it's going to be a few months until we see how that fully evolves. Are the products for Trak Racer going to be on the Fanatec website? I mean, probably at some point. Will they stick a Fanatec brand name on something? Maybe not. I think they're going to keep the Trak Racer brand name for now. And there were some overlapping products there, right, between the ranges. So I wonder if they
Yes.
just get kiboshed.
It's fascinating because Trak Racer has always been quite well known for its tubular sim racing cockpits. Recently, there's been a shift for Fanatec towards more tubular based products, which ironically was actually originally going to be a Corsair sim racing rig. So Corsair have a sim racing rig in development. They buy Fanatec. That rig becomes a Fanatec rig, but it is largely a tubular rig, and the other offshoots of that rig, the smaller version, is also a tubular rig. Trak Racer, known for its tubular rigs, comes in and now is part of the same company. So there's a huge merge of very similar things for a similar audience. So what will happen now? Will the Trak Racer products sort of just, will the learnings be taken from those and put into the Fanatec products? Will Fanatec start essentially just selling the Trak Racer rigs that are in development as Fanatec? I'm sure it'll just be a complete amalgamation of ideas, but it's fascinating because there's going to be two totally different approaches to what is a very similar concept. And hopefully that doesn't create, I'm sure there will be at points some clashes there and some very interesting discussions, but absolutely wild.
The CEO, once again, of Corsair, was quoted as, "We think it will take about 3 to 6 months to integrate our system infrastructure." So I presume from that is like the sales process, the back end things, stock management tools that they might use, and potentially customer service and warranties and things like this. We did also get a quote from Matt Sten, the original co-founder of Trak Racer, who now stays on, to say that all your warranties are still completely valid, so don't worry about that. And another small detail is it's a $50 million deal, $40 million cash up front in dollars, which I think is paid for, and there's potentially another 10 million earnout. So should certain performance targets, although we don't know what they are, be hit. But yeah, fascinating times for the peripheral market.
Just a couple of other quick crossover notes as well. When you're talking about Trak Racer and Fanatec, you of course also had the TRZ motorcycle sim. Now that's not something that Fanatec are already doing, but it's another niche area of sim racing that some of Fanatec's competitors are, maybe beginning to look at. So there's something there that Fanatec are going to have now to potentially sell to customers. You also have all the licensing. We see plenty of Trak Racer officially licensed products, whether it be Aston Martin F1 or Alpine or Porsche, Hot Wheels even, we saw at the Sim Racing Expo in Charlotte as well. And Fanatec is also known for its official licensing partnerships, including the likes of Porsche as well, and many others. So that's, I guess, just a huge library now of licenses that are potentially going to be in, products that are going to be worked on with those licenses. And then you also have wheelbases. Fanatec, well known for its direct drive high-end wheelbases. Trak Racer also produced prototype versions of wheelbases for its own customers in the past. It was a couple of years ago now that we tried those at the Sim Racing Expo in Germany in 2024. No idea what the situation is with those. We haven't heard much on them since, but that's another thing that Trak Racer and Fanatec are both attacking the same product. So it's just a fascinating development on all fronts.
My opinion is those prototype Trak Racer wheels and wheelbases that we've seen a few times are dead. I mean, I don't know why you'd ever continue with that project now that you also own Fanatec. I don't know anything for a fact. That's my opinion. Also, what you mentioned there about motorcycle was specifically mentioned by the Corsair CEO as one reason why they were interested in Trak Racer, alongside the truck seat, and they have an Airbus license as well for flight sim equipment. So it's an additional sim-related stuff that I think is really appealed here. Just read out one quick comment about this before we move on from John Cooley on the Traxion.gg website, which you can read every single day with the latest racing game and sim racing news. And this is, in his opinion, Trak Racer has some of the worst customer experience for sim racing. I hope Corsair can sort out the customer service and delivery issues that this company is always having. I ordered once, but never again. I buy Trak Racer products through a third party now with next day delivery that are in stock. Good luck if you buy from Trak Racer. I'll abbreviated that sentence there. It seems like it's potluck. So yeah, I mean, this will be all rolled into, I think, over time, the sort of the same customer service, and we'll have to see. I mean, I know some people are not so happy with the Corsair customer service as well sometimes, but John's had a bad experience here, I think.
Well, no, a similar thing was Fanatec, right? When Fanatec got bought by Corsair, a massive issue was the customer service and delivery issues and products not arriving or orders not going through. Then Corsair seems, I would say, to have stemmed the flow with that from my outside perspective, but maybe I'm wrong. So, there's history tells us that Corsair could improve this, but still not going to be perfect. But let's wait and see.
Right, just before we move on to the next topic, I'd just like to mention that Traxion GG merchandise is now available. You can simply go on your phone or your computer or your tablet to shop.traxion.gg. That's the URL. John, if you're watching this particular podcast episode, because you can watch on the Traxion Control YouTube channel or on Spotify, he's wearing a particularly lovely piece of merchandise there. If you want to see more pictures of John wearing T-shirts, visit that website. But there's also mugs and coasters and pin buttons and a magnet alongside the T-shirts, and it just helps out the show. Okay, the next topic is, at last, many months later, Saudi Arabia now owns Electronic Arts. For racing game fans, that means not much at the minute.
Who knows?
Who knows? Jared Kushner, Trump's son-in-law, has helped broker the deal. It's taken 10 months. It's $55 billion, although some of that is, or a significant portion of that is borrowed, which might mean cuts within EA immediately, if you believe Jason Schreier, who's got some leaks from the company, so it's not on record. But we should say that Andrew Wilson, the CEO of Electronic Arts, who controversially recently took a significant bonus due to Battlefield 6 sales, but while simultaneously making part of the team redundant, who made that game. That's my opinion on him, summed up in a nutshell. This moment recognises the extraordinary people whose creativity, ambition, passion have made EA one of the world's leading interactive entertainment companies. John, what do you think Saudi Arabia will do with EA in terms of racing games?
I mean, who knows? This is crazy. I mean, to think, a few years ago, when you talk about EA, for example, buying Codemasters from a racing game perspective, it was already a big deal. Codemasters taking in Slightly Mad Studios from a racing game niche. It was like, oh, that's interesting. Then suddenly EA takes Codemasters, and that was huge. And you think EA is the big, corporate overlord that controls all of these things. And I just couldn't really imagine a situation where there's something much bigger than EA comes along and takes over. But then, of course, if it's going to be anyone, it's going to be Saudi Arabia. It's huge. I don't know what it means for racing games. We've already seen racing games take a bit of a backseat anyway with EA. So what have they got to lose from a racing game perspective is what I would ask. I don't know if we will see a resurgence of the racing game genre. Will we see, the Formula One games continue? I would hope so. That's going to be the big thing. I'd be surprised if this changes the way that the Formula One games are going, but they are already going through a transitional period anyway that we haven't yet seen the fruits of that labor. So it's difficult to know. I don't put it this way. I don't see them jumping on to immediately revive Grid Legends or to immediately revive the Rally team in Southern Studios. That I just can't see that being a thing. But who knows what's going to happen?
So if there's one, I feel very mixed about this takeover, to put it mildly. 55 billion is way too much money. And the Saudi Arabian Public Investment Fund is highly controversial. Andrew Wilson, he's got yet another payout, I believe, as a significant shareholder. There we go. He's lined his pockets. Well done to him. So the frustration I have with Electronic Arts of the recent years is you bought Codemasters for 1.2 billion in 2021 and then shut down everything it does other than the Formula One game. Complete waste. It's very easy to forget that at the time when they did that, actually Take-Two had effectively already agreed terms with Codemasters, and EA came in at the last minute with an even bigger deal. And at the time, not everybody, a lot of people online and myself and you were concerned, EA has a habit of buying things and shutting it down. It felt like they bought it just to sort of stab a needle in the eye of a rival as to actually, care about the projects. And that in the end was proven. Yes, they released Grid Legends, but I believe it was nearly finished when the acquisition went through. Project Cars 4 was cancelled. They did release EA Sports WRC, but the contract for that championship was already done pre-EA of takeover. They killed the Dirt Rally 3 game. EA Sports WRC was squandered after it initially released, and that entire rally team, as you alluded to, John, was squandered and shut down, or not officially that, we'll move to other roles if you want, but there isn't a Codemasters team to sell them anymore. Mobile titles, Rail Racing 3 and F1 Mobile Racing were shut down. Need for Speed and Burnout are missing in action, in particular Need for Speed. Criterion is now a Battlefield-only focused studio that came out in recent months. So that's all really, really bad stuff. So I think EA has been terrible for racing games in the last 10 years. Two positive things. One is they've given the EA Codemasters Birmingham team, who do Formula One, some bandwidth to have a year off to make, not a full year off because they have to make a DLC, but to reboot F1 for 27. So looking forward to seeing what that is. And the other thing is Saudi Arabia does back a lot of motorsport.
Yeah.
And so if it's those people talking to these people and they say, okay, well, we're going to continue the Formula 1 game, but can we make some other racing games? That might happen. But if that does happen, it's years from now until we see the fruits of the labour.
Yeah, and it's essentially you'd be restarting something that already existed and had a
Yes.
history and had all this work done, and then you'd be starting from scratch again. And this, you mentioned a very interesting point that I was kind of thinking as well, which is that the Saudi Arabian backing does have there is history there with motorsport, and obviously they're pushing a lot of real world motorsport stuff, Formula One, all of these things as well. There's a lot of support and investment going on there, but also in racing games and sim racing. We saw it with Rennsport in the past as well, and the big events there. So clearly there was not necessarily is an appetite to push racing games specifically, but if anything, that Rennsport situation might have actually damaged the confidence in investing in racing games and sim racing from a Saudi Arabian perspective. So who knows what's going to happen? As I said, I don't think it could have gotten any worse, other than the Formula One games being kiboshed. But I just don't see them reversing a load of big decisions. It's going to have to be something new and different. And I honestly have I've got no expectations. There's not one part of me that's like, oh, this is good news for racing games or for anything.
No,
it's just a bad thing all around. Like, yeah.
Well, it's billionaires doing billionaire things, and it's not for me to understand really. I can't help but feel at the minute that the gamer might lose out, but it will be judged in the fullness of time. And I do think I just cannot see someone taking over EA and saying, you know, that Need for Speed franchise that's been going for decades, we're just going to remain and leave that dormant. So if there's one prediction I would like to say, it is that this will help the revival of Need for Speed. But anyway, we should move on. Before I do, I just want to say we really appreciate everyone who likes, comments, subscribes, follows, watches and listens to the Traction Control podcast every week. We really appreciate it, and we really do see that support. Another way you can support us additionally to help us keep going and produce this podcast is by using one of our affiliate links. If you go to traction.gg/affiliates, there's a link in this episode description, but just visit that on the Traction website. There's a link there that's called discounts. You can get 10% off a Go Setups subscription, so that's like on ACC, Le Mans Ultimate, iRacing, and other titles. If you want a pro race setup, there's 10% off like a purchase or a subscription there. And also there's 5% off any Fanatec products using the code Traxion5. And the Go Setups discount is just simply using the code Traxion. All right, next topic is, well, a couple of days from now, we think, although we don't know, there's going to be another Gran Turismo 7 update. Hyundai Ioniq 6, a Caterham 7, and 2 JDM. No, I'm not talking about John. I'm talking about Japanese domestic market. Toyotas. Thoughts on this, John?
Good. Very, very Gran Turismo.
Very Gran Turismo.
Obviously, yes, Gran Turismo is as Japanese and JDM adjacent as it comes from a racing game, but actually the tuning side of Gran Turismo has felt a little bit less JDM in feel than maybe other titles like your Tokyo Extreme Racer and your Need for Speed even at points. Obviously Forza Horizon has gone Japanese, so even though Gran Turismo has always been very Japanese, it's also, I don't think it's gone more down the modified car route. It's sort of looked more towards the tuning car route. There's a slight difference, if you know what I mean.
There is.
But this is just a reason for Gran Turismo to lean more into the visual cosmetics. And I do think we'll see, as you were talking about this earlier, I do think we'll see 1,000 horsepower engine swaps and things for a couple of these JDM cars that will be coming to the platform. I'm personally also very interested to see what the Caterham feels like. I remember that car on first appearing Gran Turismo 5 and finding that pretty cool. I've driven a few cars like that in my time, and they are great fun. So some daily racing in the Caterham would be good. Maybe a crazy V8 engine swap on that as well.
Yeah, I think the Caterham is cool, and I like to see more of those sort of cars. There's a lot of sort of British cottage industry sports car manufacturers, and the Japanese consumers do enjoy those as well. Plus, right and drive in both markets, right? So there's always been a strong Caterham following in Japan. So I think that's really cool. They did used to make a Caterham until very recently with I think Suzuki K-Car 660cc engine. I don't think it'll be that one, but it would be cool if you can sort of downgrade engine swap into like a K-Car engine one. I think that'd be really cool. And then the other two cars we've got to mention here, Toyota Mark II Tourer V or 5, I'm not sure how you pronounce that, and the Toyota Chaser Tourer. Now, these are both on the same platform. They're sort of boxy 90s saloons, but they're rear-wheel drive with a straight six engine up front. And going to what you were saying there, John, they're known for being tuned, modded, drifted. So I think these cars are added for their cult status in the second-hand market for relatively affordable and reliable and bulletproof engines, so they can tune them up and drive around and slide around.
You must be excited for the Hyundai as well, as a former Ioniq owner and driver yourself.
I tell you why I'm not.
Oh.
No, it doesn't. Because in real life, so the Ioniq 5N is already in Gran Turismo 7, which is like this hot hatchback crossover thing. And in the real world, it's really interesting for electric cars because it has simulated gear shifts.
Yes.
With engine noise, the noise is a bit lame, but it even does like a pause in torque when you shift gears. You can almost use it to simulate engine braking. It's a really interesting thing in the real world to try and get some driving enthusiasts involved in electric cars. We've now seen Porsche copy this. You can do this on the Taycan, and Ferrari's Luce, which is very controversial, has something slightly different, but it has paddle shifters. Right. So this Ioniq 6 that's coming for this game has this simulated manual shifters. However, I don't think it will have that in the game simulated. And it's kind of weird because the Ioniq 5 shifting thing is a sim racing thing. It's fake gear shifting in real life. But then the sim racing game of it doesn't have it. And I would love to see, can't you just choose AT, automatic transmission, and MT, manual transmission in the game? And so you just manually shift like you can in real life in the game. But they don't have it. So that's the USP of this car. I don't think will be represented in the game. Therefore, I don't care about it. There we go. That was a long-winded way of car nerding there.
No, I'm glad you said it because I didn't realize that. I remember trying that feature on I think in the official Hyundai stand at Goodwood when we were both there,
right?
On a Assetto Corsa as a mod, and it was simulated there, and it kind of makes sense. So that would be bizarre.
So it's a huge omission from Polyphony Digital there that would make the car more enjoyable to drive in the sim. It would get more people in the sim playing the electric cars, I think, because at least I'm shifting gears and there's a sound. But they never got around to it as far as the last time I tried it anyway. Right,
let's see.
Moving on, final news story for this episode. Over the Hill. This is by Fun Selector and Strelka Games. This is a cute, adorable, relaxing overlanding experience. Kind of, free roam in different biomes, and you take pictures and you spot animals and you play it all co-op. John's actually the best place to talk about this because you played it relatively recently. There was a demo. But the news here is it's releasing 14th of October, not early access, just a release, 14th of October for PC via Steam, and then 2027 confirmed for PlayStation 5, Switch 2, and Xbox Series S and X. What do you make of Over the Hill, John?
It's a fascinating game, really, because it sort of appeals to multiple different facets of gaming fan. If you're into your cozy gaming, if you're a relaxed gamer that plays for fun and doesn't want anything too intense, Over the Hill suits. The soundtrack is beautiful. It's relaxing. It's co-op. You can play with your friends at any pace you want to play it. It's all about collectibles and exploration. It also appeases those who want that sort of off-roading gaming experience, the likes of SnowRunner, Mud Runner, those kind of games. Maybe Roadcraft as well. I think it appeals to those off-roading tendencies too, and trying to get up a mountain that's very difficult and using winches and pulling yourself off your roof, driving through rivers, all that kind of stuff. And arguably it appeals to your driving game fan because it's about vehicles. That's about it. Full stop on that one.
Well, no, because you do have to know your low-range gearboxes, and there's a bit of driving technique there.
Yeah, and you can do auto or manual. There's different things you can do with it, but it's all in a very sort of tidy and cute package. Think from the same developers, of course, as Art of Rally and Absolute Drift. So think Art of Rally sort of feel with the music, with the look of the game, with the simplicity of the controls, with the HUD and everything. But then add in this sort of adventure element that takes it away from rally fan nerds, I'm a rally fan nerd and I love Over the Hill too, but it opens it up to a wider audience. And suddenly you're looking at what could be a surprise major hit of the year. Like this game, do not sleep on this one at all. I think the numbers for Steam wish lists were incredibly high. The amount of hype million. The amount of hype and interest in the demo that was available to play was higher than I expected, and maybe even higher than the developers expected. I don't know, but it was high. So I do think that if enough people know about this game and then talk about it, it will attract more people from all different angles of the gaming spectrum. So I think they could be onto something pretty special here.
I agree. We'll have to play the full game, and we'll do that in a couple of months from now. Actually, we might be able to see a little bit at Gamescom soon. Stay tuned. We're not sure what we can do there. The game is confirmed for that event, though. The demo you alluded to there, John, over 500,000 people downloaded that and played it, which was a limited time demo just on Steam. So, yeah, huge potential here.
And it is really fun. I really enjoyed playing it. Just want to put that out there. It was great fun, and I'm excited for the game's full release.
Yeah, and the whole thing can be played solo, but also up to 4 players co-op. online, which is a big step forward for this particular developer. And I love that the off-road cars are sort of this boxy, older style. So they say between the 1960s and 1980s. They're all fictional, but you can tell the inspiration, and you can customize them in a really cool, rugged look. But it's also part of the vibe is it's sort of retro off-roaders as well, which I love that aesthetic.
Shall we take a look at some community questions, Tom?
Yes, good idea, John. Okay, so Nick Kearney on our Discord, that is traxion.gg/Discord, and there's a podcast chatty area just for people to post questions. However, you can also post questions for the podcast in the Spotify comments and on the YouTube comments, or even the website if you want. But this one is on the Discord. Nick Kearney says, question for you guys this week on the podcast. What do you think of SimLab sending review units of their direct drive wheelbases to influencers and brand ambassadors instead of reviewers? I personally always think it's a bad sign when companies don't man up and send their product to reviewers. Interesting question, Nick. Some context here. SimLab is making its first ever direct drive wheelbases. I believe they're up for pre-order and they should be shipping to consumers soon. There have been some previews online of nearly final work in progress versions, and they were sent, we believe, to SimLab ambassadors and influencers. Now, why we don't know for sure. We believe some of those are paid to represent SimLab. And my opinion is, I think as long as it's disclosed clearly and not a final review, it's okay. But not the end of the world and not my ideal preference of strategy.
I think if you were to look at games as opposed to hardware as an example here, I would generally say a Traxion, if we get sent a game code to review a game, but we do not get sent the game code before the game is publicly released, it tells me that the development team or the publishers do not want this game to be reviewed before it goes public. They want to sell some copies before reviews come out. Because as soon as the game goes public, of course, anyone that owns the game can technically make a review of that game, right? So for me, that generally speaking would be a bad sign. I don't know if you agree, Tom.
Oh, totally. I think you're being quite polite there. In my personal experience, every time a game has been released, like if we get the review code for a game on the day of release, it's generally a bad sign. I've had it before with Fast and Furious Crossroads, where they were like, you can have the review. I can't remember now. It was a long time ago. Like it was like a few days after release. In that instance, on the day of release, I walked to my Asda, bought a physical copy, and reviewed it as quick as I could. And guess what? It was not a good game.
So that's one part of this. Now, obviously, pre-orders are open, but the product hasn't launched yet for you to actually buy and own on the day. So it's down to you. You can choose to not pre-order this until there are reviews. That's completely down to the customer. And as it is for buying a game, but I would always advise, with hardware especially, wait until you see reviews. Now, as long as anyone making videos now clearly states that they are either an ambassador or something like that, that is fine. And these videos can, by the way, be very trustworthy if you trust the individual. You can be an individual who is an ambassador or paid, and you can also be a very trustworthy person if you've built up a repertoire of hardware or racing game reviews and you're shown to be trustworthy and proven. You can choose to trust that person. But what I would say is always watch a couple of those kinds of videos if you're going to go down that route, so that you get a rounded view. And even if you trust the person you're watching, that's fine. But it's always just going to be one person's opinion, right? So yeah. I would always say that. In terms of SimLab's specific decision here, we might still see reviewers get this product and make videos before the product actually gets officially launched or finally sent over. However, I think they've kind of potentially shot themselves in the foot with the strategy, if this is indeed the strategy that's been taken, because even if the product is great, which it very much could be, it opens them up to criticism for the strategy of sending it to influencers. And what it does is raises questions like Nick's question here, where people might not trust it as much. And that is, I think, a potential strategic error.
Yeah, totally. Could be the best wheelbase in the world, might also not be. And it has there's a seed of doubt now, which might be unjustified. We shall find out in the fullness of time.
Yeah, I tried this wheelbase, by the way, two years ago at Sim Racing Expo, and said, or one of the versions of this, a prototype version, and said it was one of the best direct drive experiences, or if not the best I'd ever had, which was totally true. It felt incredible the way it was set up, because of course it's all about how it's set up, not just about the hardware. It's about how the hardware is controlled and set up in that particular environment that you're testing it on. But then at last year's Sim Racing Expo, there were issues that SimLab worked out, but only after we'd already tried it and everyone else had tried it in public. So even though there's a reason for that, that wasn't as good. So I've had a great experience and a not so great experience. And SimLab, are known for producing fantastic products. So it's not really, I'm not concerned about the trust of SimLab as a brand, but it obviously just, opens you up to these sorts of questions.
Yeah, it's an interesting topic, and we'll see in the fullness of time how SimLab perception has been impacted or not by that particular move. Another question on the Discord from Adam B. Ian Bell leaving Project Motor Racing. Probably the end of the Sim ICL. What does ICL mean?
I can't lie, or it's just another. It's another
I'm
sim
so
racing.
Old. Somebody grey hairs.
It could also be another sim racing title abbreviation like PMR. So let us know what sim racing title is ICL would stand for.
Makes sense.
In the comments.
The bigger question is will he overpromise and underdeliver next? Well, I do think with Project Motor Racing he did overpromise and underdeliver. I think with some of the titles in the past it wasn't necessarily the case. I'd say Project Cars 3 was overpromised and underdelivered, and I think GTR overdelivered and was underpromised. So swings and roundabouts with Ian Bell. For now, he's not contactable about what's going on, which is also a strange thing. That could be a contractual thing. Who knows? I don't want to speculate too much. I'm sure we'll speak to Ian Bell at some point in the future, though.
Yeah, we certainly will. And I have no idea, absolutely no clue what he will overpromise and underdeliver next, or whether he will indeed overpromise and underdeliver, because he's had a history of doing that and also history of not doing that and just delivering great games as well. So there's a mixed bag with Ian. But either way, it's going to be entertaining to see whatever it is he does or doesn't do next in the sim racing space or completely different space.
It's certainly boring without him at the minute.
Yes.
Whatever you think of Ian Bell and the projects he's involved with, it's always fascinating and interesting and pushing some boundaries somewhere. So I say bring that on. Let's get him back. Okay, so speaking of PMR, though, last week's episode was an interview with Kevin Boland, who is the new CEO of Straight 4 Studios, who make Project Motor Racing, and Aris Vasilokis was also along for the ride for some reason. So we had Aris and Kevin on the pod. They were very, very... They had a lot to say. So I think I asked like 4 questions, and then the rest of the hour was just them talking. So always interesting to speak to them, and we're going to go through now some feedback on that. First off, a Spotify comment. Yes, you can leave Spotify comments, and you can watch the podcast. I've already mentioned it earlier on Spotify as well. This username, though, I'm not so sure about this. It comes from 12284822059. A catchy one.
Calls and texts will be charged at your standard message rate.
I think the positive news we got from this pod, in reference to last week's episode, is that the team is planning on sticking with the game and to continue making it better than it was. I hope they stick to that attitude. Those of us who remember iRacing from the early days know that even iRacing was kind of a pile back then. Somehow it survived and updated to what it is now. Side note, I just don't like subscriptions anymore. Lol. So the point being that even big games now or big sims have had rough periods in the past. And the key thing, which I think was buried in this Project Motor Racing interview that you might not have picked up on, is I asked her if there's going to be a sequel, because I think Traxion understands that was the original plan, maybe. However, they confirmed that's not the case. They're in it for the long haul, I believe that's what they said with Project Motor Racing. So yes, I think better to try and fix this than make another one.
Yeah, definitely. There is still something to be saved there, which I didn't always think. By the way, I've not been totally sure. I needed proof that the game engine and the way the game could look and could feel had the potential to be really good, and I think they've increased the number of cars that feel good to drive, and the game clearly is slowly becoming a little bit more optimized, but still a heck of a long way to go. So it's still up for debate to a degree, but yes, I do think the game is continuing to improve, and people, can they get enough people to keep playing it is the question, especially in online racing, to actually make it survive long term.
Totally. Although there's some comments about online versus single player in a minute. So we're going to go back through some of these. George says, I'm so sick of GT3s and GT4s. I think this was the most upvoted comment. Capitalize on classic cars. It's what makes you different. I agree. The one flip side to that is some of the classic cars already drove well enough already, whereas the GT3s and GT4s perhaps didn't. Aris said on the interview that he felt it was important to do GT3, GT4, and Hypercar because they're a popular current day go-to for most players. Therefore, we want to try and have a good impression to keep people playing. And I agree with that. I understand that decision. And I don't have the stats to back that up. They do. But I do think classic cars are also what makes it different. And so let's not forget about those. Once they're doing hypercars next, I hope they then revisit some of the classic car categories.
Would PMR have actually been more popular if they had completely omissed GT3 and GT4 and hypercars? Because then you don't have the same stick to beat them with. There's more cars to get right, which they didn't get right at the start, categorically. And that would have forced players to try different cars, like the old GT cars, some of which are actually been pretty good since the start. And maybe it would take away that comparative analysis tool that you can make between PMR and ACC and iRacing and Le Mans Ultimate, for example. So there's something to ponder.
Jason Murphy, 22, says, the game is trending in the right direction. The cars still drive a bit too simply, but it's better. It needs probably a year of development, so hopefully they can stay funded through that. If so, it could be a solid game in the sim racing market with crossplay. Yeah, key point there is the crossplay element. It's not completely unique because Rensport also does it, but it is a USP compared to most other PC only sims. And I do think that market, the crossplay market, deserves something decent. And he needs a year of development, so hopefully they can stay funded. Yes, this is the key thing. They are saying that they are planning to do that, at least another year of development on this one title. There is no plan B, was the term they used. But like you mentioned there, John, they need enough good things to get people playing, to get people buying, to buy the DLC, and we'll see if they get funded, right?
Yeah, for sure. Isn't it funny as well that the two sims with arguably the best sim racing crossplay at the moment are Rensport and PMR, which are two games which are controversial as well, because they're two recent sims that have not delivered from launch and have a long road ahead. So I think that's quite an interesting one, and just proves the need for good sim racing products with crossplay.
Totally. Fab RB26 or FabRB26 says, front wheel drive. Give us BTCC, Super Touring, Super Taiko, WTCC, TCR, etc. I agree in so much as those cars would do really well, especially on cross-platform. Race Room has carved a niche out to really focus on those. I know you can get TCRs in iRacing, but Race Room has like Super Touring and old BTCC cars and stuff like this, and more TCRs and the old WTCC Super 2000 cars. And I think if someone else does that as well on console, that'd be fantastic. The downside, I think, is they need to get these physics sorted for downforce rear-wheel drive cars first, right?
That's exactly what I was going to say. Fix what's there. And I don't just mean the driving, because the driving physics are mixed. Some of them are good, some of them are not so good. It's also just the rest of the game, fundamentally, like the AI, for example, and the optimization on different machinery. And fix the rest of the game before exploring a whole new world of dynamics with front-wheel drive, unless it's just an extra thing. But I can't imagine focusing on that wouldn't take away resources from other areas. So hopefully in future.
Hopefully in the future. I would love to see it as well. Let's just get the house in order. AGP7320. I don't care about online. Your online player base is a ghost town. Stop prioritizing online. I'm assuming he's saying it in that tone, but it might not be. It might be inflected in a different way. Your online player base is a ghost town. Anyway, I have young kids, so I need to pause a lot. Single player needs looked into. Allow offline custom championships. Allow weather deviation in career. Allow save points in career. Key point, actually. Career is the most bones basic career I would have expected in Toka Racing 25 years ago. I do think this is a really key point. I think the AI performance needs to be really improved, and we did talk about that in the interview, and that comes up a lot. But then they also need to rethink the career structure and what you can do and the options you can do. There were some other comments about weather in career, and there were some other comments about save points in career. Now, that's not been mentioned. I didn't ask too deep about it. I do think they need to get fundamental driving characteristics sorted first. I do think they'll get to something with the career in the future, but I do agree it does need looking at.
Certainly. I think the biggest issue with the career is actually the gameplay and the AI, because that exploits the weaknesses in the structure.
Yeah, and the car contacts and the damage and everything as well.
Exactly, and then not being able to pause and save a race midway through means that you can't reverse that damage caused by a bad gameplay in such situation. So fix the gameplay first, then add pauses as a backup, and suddenly you're maybe onto a winner. But you're right, the structure is great in theory, not very well executed in reality based on everything around it. So there's so much work still to do on PMR, honestly, and I do think single player is incredibly important. So that's all we could say.
Final two, someone with a username beginning with A that I can't pronounce. Apologies.
Anthopoulos.
Thank you, John. And it's all in caps, is this? Are you ready? Is it so hard to make a simple question about PSVR 2 support for PS5? 5 question marks. Unbelievable! 3 exclamation marks. I didn't ask it in this interview because I already asked it last year and the answer was no. There is an article on the Traxion website which we shall link to in the podcast description. Okay, D-Terminator77 says, anyone critiquing the driving of cars in PMR clearly doesn't play the game. Interesting take. The driving is literally the best part of the game. Is it perfect? No. And no sim racing game is perfect in that department. The focus needs to be much more pointed at bugs fixes, ranked online, and career mode. If folks always complain about the physics model, the game will never get to where it needs to go. If those other parts were polished, everyone will be raving about the game, in my opinion. And there's quite a few uplikes there. I mean, every part of it needs improving. So I kind of agree, but also disagree in terms of priorities.
I think the first sentence is poor. Anyone critiquing the driving of cars clearly doesn't play the game. But then you go on to say, is it perfect? No. Of course, it's okay to critique something that isn't perfect, and especially when you're talking about all the comparisons you can make with other games. Just because it's the best part of the game doesn't mean it's not needing critiquing. I think the key element here is if you only critique the driving and don't talk about anything else to do with the game, of course that's not going to be enough to fix the game. So if you're going to critique, I think you're totally right to critique the driving, and also as long as you're willing to say it's good if it's good. So, for me, for example, as a personal experience, some cars I actually really do like in Project Motor Racing. Some I think are woeful, and plenty sort of sit in the middle where they're decent but still could be better. I think that's I personally feel like I'm allowed to make that critique, but I'm also critiquing very clearly the other parts of the game. I think the AI are pants. I think the track limits were broken but are getting better. I think the career mode could be better. All of these things as well. So I think I get what you're trying to say. The driving isn't so bad. Stop just focusing on it. But to say anyone critiquing the cars clearly doesn't play the game is just incorrect in my opinion.
And on that crushing disappointment. No. Thank you very much, everybody, for listening to the Traction Control podcast. We really appreciate the likes, the comments, the subscriptions and the follows. Please do continue to do that on your favorite podcast platform. We see the numbers rising. It really does mean a lot. Don't forget, code Traxion if you want to save money on Go setups, and code Traxion5 if you want to save money on some Fanatec equipment. There are other brands as well, all listed on our website. There's a website, the newsletter, the Discord. We've got all those plugs in at TractionDG on social media, and we'll be back next week. Thank you.